Welcome to the Measured Advertising Podcast. This is a podcast designed for business owners and entrepreneurs that are interested in advertising and marketing from a perspective of a place where you can measure it, you can track it, you can scale it, right? Putting real numbers around your marketing. So this is a podcast where we're really not going to talk about kind of shiny objects and new marketing tactics. We're going to talk about the old school methods that will work, whether it's our current year or whether it's 100 years from now. So if you're interested in those topics, continue to listen, and I just want to thank you for stopping by. All right, so welcome back to the Measured Advertising Podcast. As always, I am just super grateful you're here. On today's episode, I actually want to give you a case study of what it looks like to go from not having a business whatsoever, moving to a completely new state, launching a business within roughly just over 30 days, and having business within pretty much a month of getting launched. So let's get into it. So again, the past couple episodes, we're kind of talking about some of the principles of direct response advertising. And again, today I'm going to give you a case study, a real life case study, our actual life of applying these principles of measuring your advertising to a completely new business that did not exist. So to kind of give you a quick background, my wife and I moved to Florida, at least at the time of this recording, just a couple months ago in March. And prior to living there, we lived in Oklahoma for a year. And as our lease was coming up in Oklahoma, we were kind of making a decision on where we were going to live. Long story short, we were planning to move to the West Coast, and things didn't work out. And we had basically a 2-week period of time where our lease was going to be up, and we had to figure out where we were going to live. So no stress at all. Two little kids, and got to find a place to live. So we kind of looked at the map. We've always wanted to live near the beach, and of course, when you're living in Oklahoma at the time, which actually we lived in an area that we really enjoyed, a lot of great families, but we didn't want to live there long term. So we were trying to plan out where to live, and obviously the beach comes to mind, and the state of Florida has a whole lot of that. We had visited the 30A area of Florida just once, actually, on what a lot of folks call a baby moon. So right before you're about to have your first child, I guess, you go on a little vacation before things get crazy. And so that's what we did before our first kid, our son, was born. And we really liked it there. And so we said, you know what, let's go ahead and move to 30A. So we went on Zillow, found a property for lease that was that worked for us, and submitted an application and pulled the trigger, and didn't actually go and check out the spot. Just kind of were acting on a whim that everything was going to work out good. And long story short, it worked out phenomenally. Really enjoy where we're living. So again, we packed up our bags, and along the journey, we were kind of talking about, what are we going to do when we move here? Like, what business are we going to launch? What are we going to do? So, obviously, I probably referenced we ran a photography business in Texas for a handful of years before we had children. Again, using direct response principles to build that, which was a blessing. We kind of wound that down once we had our kiddos. And so this go around in Florida, like, what are we going to do? Well, the part of Florida we were moving to, again, is the 30A area. There's tons and tons of visitors every year. There's about 5 million visitors that come here. So a lot of tourism. And of course, the fact that there's a beach, there's a lot of people that get beach photography of them and their family, right? Kind of makes sense. So with the photography background, we said, let's, maybe not recreate the wheel here. Let's see if we can create a, little family photography business. So long story short, we pack up the U-Haul. We have help from our mother and father-in-law moving from Oklahoma to 30A in Florida. And we get there, we get settled. We spend a couple of weeks just kind of, unpacking and kind of checking out the different spots. And I think within pretty much the first 2 weeks, we said, okay, let's kind of roll up our sleeves and work on building this business. So keep in mind, we had no brand. There's no website. There was no social media pages created. There was literally nothing, just the thought process of we should start a business here. Again, we didn't know anybody here, the whole thing. So this is what we did. So we basically, my wife joined a bunch of Facebook groups for moms in the area, of people that kind of meet up and stuff like that, just because, of course, she just kind of wanted to connect with people. But also what we did is hey, we're building a completely new business. Nobody knows us. We don't have any sort of portfolio to show when it comes to beach photography. So let's just go ahead and offer a free family photography session to a bunch of people in the area, in exchange for leaving us a Google review and in exchange for being able to use their photos at our website. So that's what we did. We created a really simple Facebook post in a group and just said, hey, we're new to the area. We're planning on starting a family photography business, and we want to offer, 5 families a free photo session on the beach in exchange for a review and being able to place photos on our website. And of course, like any sort of offer like that, a free offer, no strings attached, a lot of people reached out to us, which was great. We went ahead and scheduled a bunch of those sessions, got them done, and people left us a review. So I didn't actually start building our website until I think almost all of our sessions were done. Maybe in early stages, I bought the domain and all that, but I don't think I completely finished the website until we actually serviced the customers, or not even the customers, but the clients, the families, and got our reviews back. So we did that. People were super happy and pleased. My wife took the pictures. There's a beach that thankfully we're just about a 7-minute drive away from. So we scheduled all the sessions to be done there just so it was convenient for my wife to take those pictures, especially with our little ones being young. We just wanted to keep it close by. So all that was great. People left 5-star reviews. And then from there, pretty much it was, okay, let's go. We have a website, we have a portfolio people can look at, we have positive reviews, we have the baseline of a business set up now, right? Like prior to that, we had absolutely nothing. And now at least we have a website and reviews, like perfect. Okay. So like step 1 complete. Next step is like, okay, now we need to actually get customers and get them profitably. So the next step is important. This is kind of what we talked about on the episode that talks about like having traceable advertising, a way to measure your advertising, and also having numbers that your advertising needs to be held accountable to. So for us, I wanted to keep it really simple before going and getting really fancy with everything. I just sat down and I said, what advertising channel probably makes the most sense for us to start with? And so for us, it was Google Ads, right? That's kind of like low-hanging fruit for your business. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably launched Google Ads before, or you've considered doing it. What a great advertising channel, right? Like that you have people that are literally sitting down and typing in the thing that you offer, and you can pop up an ad after they search for that thing. Like what a beautiful marketing channel, right? So we thought, okay, well, there's tons of people again visiting the 30A area. They're looking for a beach photographer, and so that probably means a good percentage of them are going on Google. So I thought, okay, great, let's use Google. So if you've ever used Google Ads before, one of the things you can do is use what they call like their keyword planner tool, which basically allows you to go in. You just basically have to create a Google Ads account and just type for like keyword planner. And you can go in and you can type a couple keywords related to your business, and you can see on average how many people are searching that keyword per month. And then the nice part is you can also see, hey, what does it cost on average, on the low end and the high end to get somebody to click on one of your ads, right? So you can kind of do some, call it like I call it redneck math or back of the napkin math to figure out on average how much you might pay per click in order to get your ad seen for those people searching that keyword. And then, roughly what it might cost you to get a lead and so on and so forth. So when I looked for our keywords, the bids were anywhere between like $1 to $2, on the low end, and maybe upwards to like $5 and $6 on the high end. So I thought, okay, well, we can get into the game of buying clicks for, call it $2. Great. Okay. So then the next question was, on average, how many clicks will it take me to get somebody to fill out a form on our website, like a simple inquire form, to inquire about a session? Well, on average, typically, you would like to see at least a 10% conversion rate on your website, right? Like that would be probably on the low end, but also a realistic range. So I said, okay, well, I'll probably end up spending roughly $20 per lead. Okay, cool. Next question is, of the people that fill out a lead form, like how many are we actually going to have a conversation with, right? Because some people may fill out a form and you just never hear from them, right? Of course, that's where a lot of the follow-up is key, having good systems in place to follow up with people. But on the front end, like how many conversations do we think we're going to have? Well, for me, just in our other photography business, like if we could talk to 3 out of 10 leads, like that would be a win. Okay, right? So then you just do the math. You say, well, I'm spending $20 a lead. and I'm going to talk to 3 out of 10 people, that would make my cost roughly $66 to have a conversation, right? So then the next question, again, this is just back of the napkin math, brand new business. This is all theoretical, but this gets us into a range of, if I launch advertising, here are my expectations, and the advertising will tell me if we're on expectation or off expectation, if I need to make changes or not, right? So this is kind of the thought process I went through. So now from that, I'm willing to pay $66 to have a conversation, or this is probably what it should cost me. How many conversations would it take me to actually get somebody to be a customer, right? Well, on average, anywhere from 25 to 30%, maybe 3 out of 10, right? So I say, okay, I probably need to talk to 3 or 4 people, but let's say we have to have 3 conversations, right? That puts my cost per new customer at $200, right? So long story short, back of the napkin math told us, hey, if we can spend $200 on Google Ads and get a customer out of it, that would be a win. Okay, so that was kind of my back of the napkin math. Now we need to come up with okay, what do we charge for a photography session? So now some of this, of course, again, this is very rudimentary back of the napkin math. Some of it's looking at market research, what other people charge, what's fair, what's the high end, what's the low end, what's the middle range, right? For me, I kind of wanted to first approach it from what am I willing to spend on a percentage basis of total revenue to acquire a customer, right? So there's of course different ways to go about your pricing. Every business is completely different. So much of it is just competitive market dynamics, right? How competitive your business is, and again, what some of the other players are. But I was first wanting to look at it from a percentage of revenue component, and then see how that matched up to the market. So basically, what I did was I said, I'd be willing to spend 30% of revenue in order to acquire customers. So if we're assuming that $200 is what it costs, and $200 represents 30%, right? That meant we would have to charge somewhere in the range of mid $600, right? So what we did was we said, hey, let's just kind of round up, and we said let our first package, our first offer to the market be a $700 session on the beach, right? So for you, your market, maybe you've gotten family photos. Maybe you're that's way too expensive. Maybe you're in other metros where you're people charge, $2,000 plus, or whatever the case is. So for us, that was what we did. We started with a 30-minute session. Again, I won't belabor the photography side of things, the business side, but we kind of looked and saw what other people are charging. We were yeah, that's kind of reasonable. So our first package, I think, was a $697 package. And we said we'd be willing to spend $200 to generate, call it $700 in revenue. My wife is doing the session. As of right now, we have pretty much one team member that's a contractor that edits our photos for us. So our margin for this business is roughly 60% net margin, right? So we just pay for our advertising. We pay a one-time permit to do commercial photography on the beaches here on 30A. We just pay the county a one-time fee, and we just have our editing cost and our small software cost to use our CRM and et cetera, right? So very high margin business. Fast forward, I'll kind of give you a glimpse at current time in history. We're now looking to onboard some photographers. So fingers crossed, hopefully we can find some folks to service customers, because as I start telling you, by month 2, we had to turn away customers, which was not fun. So that was kind of our framework, right? Zero business. We serviced a bunch of people for free in exchange for pictures and reviews, built the website, did back of the napkin math on this is what the unit or the economics look like on the advertising side of what we should pay per lead, per conversation, per customer. Now it's a matter of let's roll this thing out into Google Ads. So that's what I did. So moved here March 2nd, spent a couple of weeks getting moved in. After that, we spent maybe the next week and a half or 2 weeks servicing customers. And then I'm looking at my ad tracking sheet. Our first advertising went live April 12th. So that's when everything went live. So I'm going to look at the month of April. I basically have April, May, and June data that I'll share with you. So those are my metrics. Again, keep in mind, the total cost to acquire a customer was $200 that I was willing to spend on average to acquire. I was happy to spend $20 to get a lead, $66 to have a conversation. So let's see how everything played out. So again, we built the campaign on Google. using keywords of people looking for what we have to offer, keeping it really simple, very simple website, portfolio, reviews, place to inquire, nothing like super fancy, no really like crazy offer or anything crazy like that. Just literally, finding people that want a family photo session, created a basic website around that and a place for them to fill out a form to learn more, like ultra simple, and a simple spreadsheet where I can track and measure what's happening, right? Like easy peasy, nothing crazy. So month one, we spent a grand total of $752. I think I set my budget for, I don't know, maybe call it $50 a day. Nothing crazy. I just wanted to test and see, can we get customers from a brand new business, and can we get them at the right price? So month of April, we spent $752. We generated 13 leads at a grand total of $57. So out of the gate, not super great, right? Like I was willing to spend $20 to get a lead, but we acquired them for $57. So, okay, certainly higher than we wanted. Of the 13 leads, we actually had 10 conversations, right? And our cost per conversation was $75. Okay, so not super bad. The cost per lead, not great. But again, ultimately, the main number that we're concerned with is how much it costs to acquire a customer, right? That's the ultimate number. In Claude Hopkins' book, I'll probably touch this on another time, lead flow is great, and getting your cost per lead down is great, but he says the ultimate number is what it costs you to acquire a customer, right? So in this case, I'm like, okay, don't love the cost per lead at least initially. Our cost per conversation is better. So I was willing to spend $66, or I was happy with $66, but we were paying $75 to have a conversation. Okay, not too bad. Now let's get to customers. So of the 10 conversations, we actually generated 4 customers. So for a drum roll, please, we spent $752 in the month of April. We got 4 customers at a grand total of $188 per customer. Awesome, right? So month one, just launched his business, and we're able to get 4 customers, right, from a business that by the end of April, we launched the ads April 12th, and by the end of April, we got 4 customers. Like, not massive, right? But for us, we were happy. We were like, cool, like little business that we can kind of run on the beach, and my wife can go out maybe like a day or 2 a week, and great, generates like high net margin for us, and it's a little stream of income, and maybe we can hire some photographers and kind of grow it as time goes that we're living here. So like, cool, great. 4 brand new customers at $188 a piece. Wonderful. So let's roll into the next month, right? So that's April. The month of May comes, and we spend a grand total of just over $1,700. So April we spend $700. May we spend $1,700. So let's look at our cost per lead. So we generate in May 47 leads this time, and our cost per lead is now $36. So in April it was let me just look back, $57. So now it drops down to $36, and some of that is by nature of just Google ads. As they start running longer and as you start getting more conversions, it gets a little more efficient, right? So I didn't really change much about the website, so it's not like I did anything fancy on that side. I just kind of let the ads run a little bit longer. So the cost per lead dropped down to $36. We had 39 conversations, and our cost per conversation was $43, right? So the previous month, our cost per conversation was $75. In the month of May, now it is $43, and our lead to conversation rate is 82%, right? So I was assuming, hey, if we could talk to 3 out of 10 people, 3 out of 10 leads, that's a win. We're talking to 82% of leads. Now, keep in mind, this is Google advertising. This is people that are clearly in the now bucket of wanting to research and look for a photographer right now. If I were to run these ads on Facebook, where people are not necessarily searching, you should expect that lead to conversation rate to be much, much lower, right? Because they're not necessarily in the moment thinking about wanting to book a photography session. So there is context to obviously Google ads and what the numbers look like. But we got 39 conversations, and from that we got 6 customers. Now, 6 customers out of 39 conversations means we only closed 12%, right? Not good, but there's context to that. At that point, we didn't, the people that booked in April, A lot of them, or the four of them booked in April, and some of the early ones that booked in May. I believe, I'm just trying to remember, I think a lot of them were coming in on the same dates. And so we just weren't able to service those folks, I believe. Or I think my wife left out of town. I'm just trying to remember this off the top of my head why our percentage was so low. But my wife was gone for, I think, a week in Texas. And so a lot of people were wanting to book. Anyway, long story short, we couldn't service people. It wasn't because like something broke in our sales process, but we just couldn't service them. So anyway, we only closed 6 customers, and our cost per customer, even though our cost per conversation was $43 below the 66 we're willing to pay, our cost per closed customer is $285. So $85 higher than we wanted to, but we were still ROI positive. So let's roll into the next month here. In the last month and a half for you is the month of June. We spent a grand total of just over $2,100. We generated 60 leads at $35 a lead. So a little, again, still higher than the $20 was the assumption. We had 50 conversations at $43 a conversation. That's an 83%, again, lead to conversation rate. And this time we closed 15 customers out of the 50. And our cost per customer was $143. So that generated us an ROI that was close to about 5x, right? And so I think our goal marketing cost per acquisition was 30%, as a percentage of revenue. And I think in the month of June, we ended up being at 21% of revenue. So happy with that. And the business is still running. So at this point, we actually had to just pause our advertising. My wife is doing all the photography sessions. So we had 15, 6, 21. So we had like 25 customers for my wife to service. Again, this is like a very small business, very tiny. You probably, if depending on your business, service that in a day or in a couple hours, depending on the type of business you run. But this is kind of a one-to-one service-based business that we're running in a local area just as a kind of a beta test. So we had 25 customers. We have 2 little kids. We need to find some photographers to help with us. So I'm like, sweet. The numbers check out and the business works. It's profitable. Customers are happy. Great. Like, this is really cool, right? And we're able to track and measure. And of course, through this process inside the Google Ads account, as we got closer to June, we had multiple different ads running. So there was one that was a clear winner. Pause the other ones. I need to split test some more. But this just gives you an idea, like when you kind of look at business and marketing from a kind of a scientific-ish approach. And now this is like again, I'm just using back of the napkin math, nothing super crazy, but at least saying like, for our marketing to win, this is what we would be happily pay. And then launching marketing and then measuring it and holding it accountable to results, right? And that's just what we did again with the brand new business, and that's kind of where we're at today. Business is profitable, and we'll see what happens. Again, hopefully we can find some people to onboard to our team and make it a little bit bigger and more efficient, and go from there. But I just thought it was kind of neat to at least just share with you some practical kind of like, we talk about the principles, but then here's how we applied it. Again, very small way. This is not a massive, huge business. It's a little tiny thing we created a couple months ago, but I just thought it was cool to at least share some like real life kind of like results of like what happens when you apply this stuff from like a business not existing to launching it and then running advertising and then getting 25 customers that we never had previously that didn't know about us until we ran ads, and right, they showed up and so on and so forth. So anyway, hope this was beneficial for you. If you haven't run Google Ads, like shoot, maybe give it a try and do some of your own back of the napkin math if you haven't already, and see what would make sense for you to pay for your business, right? Maybe you sell products that are worth, $20K plus or 20 or 30 grand. And maybe for you, instead of $20 a lead, you might be willing to spend $200 a lead or $500 a lead, and the math makes sense for your business, right? So I would just encourage you, if you haven't sat down and kind of talked about what numbers make sense, like put it down, and then when you run your advertising, just hold your advertising accountable. So anyway, hope that was kind of useful, or at least kind of like stirred your thought process a little bit. Use the Google Keyword Planner tool if you haven't already, and just kind of see like what are other people bidding in your market on keywords, and and does that kind of fit into your math or not? Who knows? And go from there. So anyway, that was it for this episode, and I will see you on the next one.